The desert wind howled like a forgotten ghost across the cracked asphalt of Route 66, kicking up swirls of red dust that stung the eyes and choked the throat. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour where the world felt too quiet, too empty, except for the distant rumble of thunder rolling in from the black horizon. In a roadside diner on the outskirts of nowhere, Arizona, a flickering neon sign buzzing, "Eats like a dying firefly," a little girl no older than 7 sat alone at a corner booth, her small frame hunched over a half-eaten plate of fries gone cold. Her wide eyes, rimmed with tears that hadn't yet fallen, darted toward the rain-slicked window every few seconds. Olivia clutched a faded stuffed bear, its button eyes as lifeless as the empty highway outside. She had been waiting for hours, or so it seemed, since the stranger had dropped her off with a hurried promise. "Your mum's coming back soon, kid. Just stay put." But the clock on the wall ticked mercilessly, and no one came. The diner's door slammed open with a force that rattled the coffee mugs behind the counter. Olivia jumped, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. In strode a man who seemed carved from the night itself, Ethan Ghost Harlan. A towering figure in weathered leather, his broad shoulders straining against a vest patched with the insignia of the Iron Vipers, a motorcycle club that whispered through the Badlands like a legend. His face was a map of old scars, unslashing across his jaw like a lightning bolt frozen in time, and his eyes, dark and unreadable, scanned the room with the wariness of someone who'd seen too many betrayals. The air shifted with his presence. The scent of rain-soaked leather and engine oil cut through the greasy haze of the diner. He wasn't here for pie or coffee. A tip from a brother in the club had pulled him off the road. Something about a kid left high and dry, an echo of debts unpaid from years gone by. Ethan's boots thudded against the linoleum as he approached the counter, his voice a low gravel that turned heads. "Coffee black, and whatever she's having." He nodded toward Olivia without looking at her directly. The waitress, a weary woman with peroxide hair, glanced nervously between them. "That one's been here since dusk, says her name's Olivia. Mom's truck broke down up the road, or so the story goes, but no one's called." Ethan's jaw tightened, a flicker of something ancient stirring in his chest, a promise he'd buried deep, one that bound him to ghosts he couldn't outride. He slid into the booth across from the girl, his massive frame making the vinyl seat creak. Olivia froze, her tiny hand tightening on the bear, but curiosity won over fear. She peered up at him, her gaze snagging on the intricate tattoo peeking from the cuff of his sleeve. A woman's face, ethereal and fierce, inked in faded blues and blacks, surrounded by swirling vines that looked like chains breaking free. With a child's unfiltered bravery, Olivia reached out, her fingers brushing the inked skin. The touch was light, like a butterfly's wing, but it sent a jolt through Ethan sharper than any blade. "Why is my mom's face there?" she whispered, her voice trembling but clear, eyes wide with a mix of wonder and accusation. The diner seemed to hold its breath. The rain pattered harder against the glass, blurring the world outside into a watercolor of shadows. Ethan's hand stilled mid-reach for his coffee, his pulse thundering in his ears. That face, Laura, inked into his arm 2 decades ago after a night of whispered vows under a blood moon. Laura, the wild-hearted nurse who'd patched him up after a bar brawl in '98, who'd shared his fire before life tore them apart. He'd heard rumors she'd vanished into the desert life, chasing dreams or demons, but never imagined this. A daughter, bearing her eyes, her fire. The weight of it crashed over him like a rogue wave. Ethan leaned back, the leather of his vest creaking, fighting the urge to bolt. Promises were his curse. He'd sworn to Laura once, in the heat of youth, to watch over her if the world turned cruel. But wars, both overseas and in the streets, had scarred him, left him leading the Vipers in a brotherhood forged from loss. Now, this child, alone and fragile, stared at him with questions that peeled back layers he'd welded shut. "What's your full name, kid?" he asked softly, his voice rough but steady, like gravel under tires. Olivia hesitated, then murmured, "Olivia Reyes. Mum's Laura. She said we'd go to the ocean someday, but the truck—" Her voice trailed off, fresh tears spilling now, hot and unchecked. Ethan's mind raced, piecing fragments. A call from a Viper scout about a woman in trouble on the old highway. Whispers of men who preyed on the vulnerable. Truckers with badges that meant nothing in the dark. Corruption festered out here. Sheriffs turning blind eyes for payoffs. Families shattered like cheap glass. He couldn't walk away. Honor didn't allow it. Not when the tattoo burned like a brand, a reminder of vows that time couldn't erase. "Your mom's not far," he said, though doubt gnawed at him. It was a lie wrapped in hope, but necessary. He pulled out his phone, thumbs flying over the screen. A text to the club. "Got a ghost from the past, rally at dawn, bring the brothers." 50 miles away, engines would stir in the night, headlights piercing the storm like beacons of loyalty. As the waitress refilled his mug, steam rising like morning mist, Ethan watched Olivia nibble a fresh fry, her small victory against the fear. The rain eased to a drizzle, the neon sign casting erratic glows across their faces. He thought of his own losses, the brother lost to a desert ambush, the wife who'd left when the nightmares came too loud. Redemption wasn't a destination, it was this moment, choosing to stand when the road called you to run. "We're gonna find her, Olivia," he promised, the words sealing something unbreakable. Outside, his Harley waited, chrome gleaming under the diner's light, ready to roar into the unknown. The little girl's touch had awakened more than memory. It had ignited a fire that would draw the Vipers like moths to flame, a convoy of thunder against the gathering dark. But as they stepped into the cooling night, Olivia's hand slipping trustingly into his calloused one, Ethan felt the first prickle of unease. Headlights flickered in the distance. Not friendly, not Viper. The desert held secrets, and some promises demanded blood to keep. The engine growled to life beneath him, a beast stirring from slumber, carrying them toward a horizon where justice waited. Sharp as a switchblade moon, the Harley's engine throbbed like a heartbeat in the damp night air, its low rumble vibrating through Ethan's bones as he eased Olivia onto the passenger seat behind him. She clung to his waist with surprising strength for such a small thing, her cheek pressed against the worn leather of his back, the stuffed bear tucked under one arm like a shield. The desert stretched out before them, an endless black canvas dotted with the faint glow of distant stars, broken only by the erratic flicker of those approaching headlights. 2 sets, maybe 3, cutting through the drizzle like predatory eyes. Ethan twisted the throttle just enough to send them gliding forward, gravel crunching under the tires, but he didn't gun it yet. No need to draw fire in the open. The Vipers taught you to read the shadows first. Rain-slicked asphalt gleamed under the bike's headlight, reflecting fragments of the neon diner's glow as they pulled onto the shoulder. Olivia's breath came in shallow puffs against his jacket, warm and trusting despite the chill. "Is that Mommy's truck?" she asked, her voice muffled but laced with hope, pointing toward the lights that were closing in, slow and deliberate. Ethan squinted into the murk, his scarred hand flexing on the handlebar. Not a truck, sedans, unmarked, the kind that screamed authority without the flash. Sheriff's deputies, maybe, or worse, the kind who patrolled these back roads with agendas that twisted the law into knots. Whispers in the club ran deep about men in badges who turned a blind eye to the lost, pocketing favors from the shadows that preyed on folks like Laura. He killed the engine with a flick of his wrist, the sudden silence amplifying the patter of rain on his helmet and the distant crunch of tires on wet pavement. "Stay close, kid," he murmured, swinging his leg over and lifting her down gently, his massive frame shielding her from the wind. Olivia nodded, eyes wide but steady. as if the night's strangeness had forged some quiet resolve in her. Ethan positioned himself between her and the road, one hand resting on the knife hilted at his belt, not for drawing, but for the comfort of its weight. Promises weren't kept with bullets. They were kept with the steel in your spine. The vehicles pulled up 20 yards out, doors creaking open like old bones. 2 men emerged from the lead car, silhouettes against the headlights' glare, broad-shouldered, in rumpled uniforms that hung loose from too many late nights. The taller one, with a mustache like tangled wire, stepped forward, his flashlight beam slicing through the rain to pin Ethan in place. "Evening, stranger," he drawled, voice oily as spilled motor oil. "Routes closed up ahead. Breakdown on the highway. You seen anything?" His partner hung back, hand hovering near his holster, eyes flicking to Olivia with a hunger that set Ethan's teeth on edge. Ethan met the beam without flinching, his stance loose but rooted, like an oak in a storm. "Just passing through," he replied, gravel in his tone matching the road. "Girl here's waiting on her mom. Truck trouble, they said." He nodded toward Olivia, who peeked out from behind his leg, clutching her bear tighter. The mustached man's gaze lingered on her a beat too long, then slid back to Ethan, appraising the viper patches like they were targets. "Yeah? Well, kid shouldn't be out here alone. Hand her over. We'll get her to a safe spot." The words dripped with false concern, but Ethan caught the undercurrent, the way the second deputy shifted, blocking the path back to the diner. Years of riding with the vipers had honed Ethan's instinct sharper than any blade. This wasn't protection. It was containment. Laura's face burned in his mind, inked and eternal on his arm, a vow from a time when love was fierce and fleeting. He'd failed her once, letting the road pull him away after the war scars deepened. But this child, her echo, demanded he stand firm. "She's with me," he said flatly, stepping forward just enough to eclipse the flashlight's glare. "And we're heading out, unless you've got a reason to stop us." The air thickened, rain hissing on hot metal as tension coiled like a spring. The mustached deputy chuckled, low and without humor, rain beading on his brimmed hat. "Big man, huh? We got reports of a woman causing trouble up the line. Abandoned her kid, maybe on the run. Sounds like your story fits." Lies, Ethan knew. The club's network buzzed with truths these men buried. Corruption here ran like bad gasoline, sheriffs in bed with smugglers, families vanishing into the dust for the right price. Olivia whimpered softly, and Ethan's resolve hardened, a quiet fire against the cold. Before the deputy could press, Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, a vibration like distant thunder. He didn't reach for it, but he knew the vipers were stirring. Brothers across the county, loyal as blood, answering the call without question. Family chosen in the roar of engines and the heat of battles past. "Step aside," Ethan said, voice steady, eyes locked on the man's. It wasn't a plea, it was a line drawn in the wet earth. The deputy hesitated, glancing at his partner, then back to the unyielding wall of leather and scars before him. With a grunt, he waved the light away. "Fine, but watch your back out there. Desert eats the unwary." The men retreated to their cars, engines coughing to life, tail lights fading into the night like retreating wolves. Ethan exhaled slowly, the knot in his chest loosening just a fraction. He scooped Olivia up, settling her back on the bike as the Harley snarled awake. "Hold on tight," he told her, and they shot forward, wind whipping tears from his eyes, tears of rain or something deeper he couldn't say. Miles blurred by, the road a ribbon of black under storm clouds parting to reveal a sliver of moon. Ethan's mind raced ahead. The rally point at the old Viper outpost, a ghost town garage where engines sang anthems of brotherhood. He'd tell them about Laura, the promise etched in ink and memory, the girl who bridged their worlds. Redemption wasn't a solo ride, it was the convoy, the unbreakable chain. As dawn's first grey light kissed the horizon, the outpost loomed, Silhouettes of bikes lining up like sentinels, headlights blooming one by one. 20, 30, more. Vipers rolling in from the shadows, drawn by loyalty's pull. Ethan pulled up, engine dying to silence broken only by the murmur of voices and the patter of fading rain. Olivia slid down, awe widening her eyes at the gathering. "They're your friends?" she asked, voice small against the dawn. He nodded, ruffling her hair gently. "Family, kid. The kind that rides through hell for you." A grizzled brother, Marcus, clapped his shoulder, eyes questioning. Ethan glanced at the tattoo, Laura's face seeming to watch from his skin. "We've got a promise to keep," he said simply, and the air hummed with purpose. As the sun crested, painting the desert gold, the convoy formed, a thunderous line ready to carve through the corruption, seeking truth in the Badlands. But in the rear view, Ethan caught a glint. Those headlights again, trailing at a distance. The hunt had just begun, and Honor's road was never straight. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The sun climbed higher, turning the desert air into a shimmering haze that danced off the rusted hulks of abandoned cars in the Viper outpost. The old garage, its corrugated metal walls scarred by years of sandstorms and forgotten brawls, buzzed with the low hum of voices and the metallic tang of oil mixing with fresh coffee brewing on a makeshift stove. Ethan stood at the center of it all, his broad frame silhouetted against the open bay doors where bikes lined up like iron horses ready for war. Olivia sat nearby on a weathered crate, her small legs swinging idly, the stuffed bear propped beside her like a silent sentinel. The child's eyes, still shadowed by the night's ordeal, flicked curiously over the gathering men. Tattooed arms, weathered faces, a brotherhood etched in ink and scars. Marcus, the grizzled second-in-command with a salt-and-pepper beard that hid a perpetual scowl, handed Ethan a steaming mug. "Talk, ghost. You pull us out of our beds for a kid and a ghost from your past? Better be worth the ride." His voice was rough as the gravel outside, but his eyes held the steady loyalty of men who'd shared foxholes and funerals. Around them, 24 vipers leaned in, some nursing hangovers from the night before, others sharpening knives or checking chains, all drawn by the text that had rippled through their network like a shockwave. Ethan took a sip, the bitter heat grounding him, then rolled up his sleeve fully, exposing the tattoo in the morning light. Laura's face stared out, fierce and unchanging, vines twisting like promises unbroken. "It's her," Ethan said, voice low but carrying the weight of thunder. "Laura Reyes. Nursed me back after that dust-up in '98. We made vows, stupid kid stuff but the kind that sticks. Swore I'd have her back if the world chewed her up." He glanced at Olivia, who met his gaze with a quiet intensity, as if sensing the threads weaving around her. "This girl's hers, left alone in that diner like yesterday's trash. And those badges last night? They weren't there to help, smelled like the rot we've heard about, sheriffs pocketing silence while the vulnerable get swallowed." Murmurs rippled through the group, nods of grim agreement. The vipers knew the Badlands' underbelly. Whispers of a ring preying on lone travelers, women vanishing into the dunes, kids shuffled like commodities. Corruption didn't just fester, it poisoned everything, turning lawmen into wolves. One brother, a lanky veteran named Tyler with a prosthetic leg from some long-ago skirmish, pulled out a battered laptop from his saddlebag. "Got a ping from our eyes up north. Laura's truck was spotted off Route 66, near the old quarry. Breakdown. All right, but witnesses say she fought off a couple of goons before they dragged her into a van. No plates, but it matches the sheriff's fleet." Tyler's fingers danced over the keys, pulling up grainy photos from a club contact. A dusty vehicle, shadows moving in the pre-dawn light. Ethan's gut twisted, the image searing like the sun on bare skin. He'd let Laura slip away once. After the war's ghosts clawed him hollow, choosing the road over roots. But this, her daughter touching the mark of their shared fire, it demanded reckoning. Redemption wasn't forgiveness. It was action, the quiet fury of keeping your word when the easy path called. Olivia shifted on the crate, her voice cutting through the tension like a clear bell. Mummy said there were bad men following us. From the city. They wanted something she wouldn't give. The men stilled, the air thickening with unspoken outrage. Ethan knelt to her level, his scarred hand gentle on her shoulder, the leather of his glove creaking softly. "What something, kid?" She bit her lip, eyes dropping to the bare. "Papers about a place she worked, said it was wrong, what they did to people there." A hospital. Maybe Laura had always chased healing, patching the broken in a world that broke them faster. But if corruption reached that far, twisting care into chains, then the stakes climbed higher than a desert ridge. The group erupted into plans, voices overlapping like engine revs, building to a roar. Marcus mapped routes on a crumpled chart, tracing fingers over faded lines, the quarry as a choke point, backroads to flank any ambush. "We ride smart, not loud," he growled. "No guns blazing. This is about truth, pulling her out clean." Tyler nodded, syncing radios. "I'll loop in our doc contact, Sarah, the nurse from Tucson. She's got pull if we need medical." Sarah, another thread in the chosen family, a woman who'd mended more than wounds after pulling a viper from a wreck. Loyalty like that didn't fray. It forged steel. But as the convoy prepped, engines coughing awake in a symphony of growls, Ethan caught Olivia's gaze lingering on the tattoo again. She reached out tentatively, tracing the vines with a fingertip. "It looks like she's watching over you." The words hit like a punch, stirring memories of starlit nights. Laura's laugh cutting through the pain of fresh scars. He'd inked her as a talisman, a vow to protect what mattered in a life of transience. Now it watched over them both. "She is," he murmured, lifting her onto the bike's seat as the sun baked the earth golden. "And we're going to bring her home." The outpost thrummed with purpose, bikes forming a phalanx that stretched shadows long across the sand. Ethan twisted the throttle, Olivia's arms wrapping tight around him, her warmth an anchor against the wind. They led the pack, dust plumes rising like battle flags, the horizon swallowing the road ahead. But in the side mirror that glint persisted, headlights, faint but insistent, weaving through the mirage. The deputies, or their masters, trailing like vultures scenting weakness. Ethan's jaw set, the viper insignia on his back a banner of defiance. Promises survived the miles, the betrayals, the years, carried on the roar of engines and the unyielding beat of honor. Miles out, the quarry loomed, a jagged scar in the earth where red rock walls plunged into shadow. The air grew heavy, laced with the mineral bite of stone and the faint acrid whiff of something mechanical, perhaps the truck, hidden or wrecked. Ethan signaled a halt, the convoy fanning out in a disciplined arc, engines idling to whispers. Tyler dismounted first, scouting the rim with binoculars, his voice crackling over the radio. Tracks down there, fresh, and a glint, metal, maybe her rig. Heart pounding like pistons, Ethan handed Olivia to Marcus. "Keep her safe. This is viper business." She clutched his vest, eyes pleading. "Promise you'll find her." He nodded, the words sealing it anew. "On my life, kid." Descending the rocky path, boots scraping shale that echoed like warnings, Ethan led a small team, Tyler, a burly mechanic named Logan, and two others whose silence spoke of readiness. The quarry floor unfolded, a basin of forgotten digs pocked with machinery ghosts, rusted excavators, chains dangling like nooses. There, half buried in a drift of sand, sat the truck. Tires slashed, hood crumpled as if punched by giants. No sign of Laura, but the cab door hung open, a smear of something dark on the seat suggesting struggle, not surrender. Ethan's blood ran cold. He knew the signs of aggression, the echoes of fights won and lost. A rustle from the shadows snapped them alert. Logan drawing a tire iron, Tyler covering flanks. Out stepped a figure, hands raised. Not a deputy, but a woman disheveled, her nurse's scrubs torn and dust-caked. Sarah, their contact, eyes wide with urgency. Ethan, thank God. I tailed the van here. They took her to the old mill, 5 miles east. Said she's a witness, spilling on their operation, falsified records, kids shuffled for payoffs. Her voice trembled, but her stance was iron, the chosen family's fire burning bright. Corruption's web unraveled thread by thread, a hospital ring, badges bought, lives traded like parts in a junkyard. Ethan's mind raced, piecing the moral maze. This wasn't just rescue, it was justice, poetic and unyielding, against the institutions that preyed on the weak. We ride, he said, the word a vow that bound them tighter. As they climbed back, the convoy reformed, engines roaring defiance into the baking sky. Olivia waited at the top, her face lighting with fragile hope as Ethan returned. The glint in the mirror grew closer now, headlights bold in the daylight, a chase igniting. But with the vipers at his back, the road to redemption stretched wide, paved with loyalty's unbreaking steel. The roar of engines swelled into a symphony of defiance as the vipers surged forward from the quarry's edge, dust devils spiraling in their wake like echoes of the storm that had broken. Ethan led the pack, Olivia's small form secured in front of him on the Harley, her arms locked around his torso with a trust that felt heavier than any chain. The desert sun beat down mercilessly, turning the air into a furnace that baked the scent of hot rubber and sun-scorched sage into the wind whipping past. Behind them, the convoy stretched, a line of chrome and leather, 20 strong now, with more brothers peeling off hidden trails to join the fray. Marcus flanked Ethan's left, his bike growling low, while Tyler and Logan rode point on the right, eyes scanning the horizon for traps. Sarah rode pillion with a younger viper named Nathan, her nurse's scrubs fluttering like a white flag in the gale. She'd insisted on coming, her voice cutting through the planning like a scalpel. Laura's one of us, patched me up after that wreck in Tucson. If they're holding her for what she knows, it's bigger than one woman. Falsified records, kids vanishing into care, that's anything but. We expose it, or it buries more. Her words hung in Ethan's mind, stirring the old fire. Promises weren't just personal, they wove through the chosen family, binding scars to shared purpose. Laura had seen the rot firsthand at that clinic. Whispers of vulnerable souls, shuffled for profit, badges sealing the silence. Justice here wasn't vengeance, it was the slow, unyielding light piercing corruption's veil. The old mill loomed in the distance, a skeletal relic against the jagged ridges, its silos like forgotten sentinels crumbling under the weight of time. 5 miles east, Sarah had said, but the road twisted through arroyos and washes, forcing the convoy to weave like a serpent shedding skin. Olivia shifted slightly, her voice barely audible over the thunder. Are we close? Mummy doesn't like tight spaces. Ethan glanced down, his gloved hand steadying her, the child's innocence cut deeper than any blade, a reminder of what the world tried to steal. Close enough. Kid, hold the line. He thought of his own ghosts, the brother who'd fallen in a desert skirmish, the vows whispered over his grave to protect the fragile. Redemption rode with them now, in the hum of engines and the unbreakable knot of loyalty. But the glint in the side mirror sharpened into clarity. 3 sedans, black as oil slicks, barreling from the quarry's dust cloud. Not deputies this time, private muscle hired shadows with no badges to hide behind. They gunned it, closing the gap with predatory speed, horns blaring a warning that dissolved into the wind. Ethan's pulse quickened, the Harley responding to his twist of the throttle like an extension of his will. Eyes back, he barked into the radio, voice gravel over static. Marcus whooped, a raw edge to it, as the convoy tightened formation. No panic, just the quiet rhythm of men who'd faced worse, foxholes turning to highways, enemies swapping uniforms for suits. The chase ignited the Badlands, engines screaming as they hit a straight stretch of cracked tarmac flanked by red rock walls. Bullets? No, these weren't the type for outright war. They herded, trying to force the Vipers into a box canyon ahead, where the mill's shadows could swallow them whole. Tyler veered wide, scouting a detour, his voice crackling. "Flank left, old service road. It'll loop us in from the rear." Ethan nodded, signaling the split. Half the convoy peeled off with Tyler and Logan, dust plumes marking their path like war paint, while the rest held the line, baiting the pursuers. Sarah's grip tightened on Nathan's waist. She knew the stakes, expose the ring, and lives like Laura's could spark real change, a moral tide against the institutional rot that devoured the innocent. Olivia buried her face against Ethan's vest, the leather warm from the sun, but her whisper carried fierce. "Don't let them take us, like they tried with Mommy." The words twisted something deep in him, echoing the tattoo's silent vigil. Laura's face, inked in the heat of youth, had been his anchor through wars abroad and battles in the streets. He'd failed her once, riding away when the nightmares clawed too deep, but this child, her living promise, demanded he rewrite the ending. "They won't," he vowed, the engine's roar underscoring the oath. Ahead, the mill's silhouette grew, rusted beams glinting like teeth in the haze, the air thickening with the musty scent of decay and hidden machinery. The sedan split two chasing the main pack, while the third dogged Tyler's flank. Ethan spotted the ambush too late, a barricade of derelict trucks blocking the service road's merge, figures emerging with bats and chains, faces masked against the grit. Logan charged first, his bike leaping the gap in a spray of gravel, tire irons swinging in a wide arc that scattered the nearest thug. "For the Vipers!" he bellowed, the cry rippling back like a battle cry. Punches landed in the chaos, fists on jaw, boot on knee. But it wasn't slaughter, it was containment, buying time to punch through. Ethan skirted the edge, shielding Olivia as he gunned past. Her small gasp lost in the fray. They burst into the mill's yard, the convoy reforming in a thunderous skid, bikes circling like wolves around a den. The structure squatted low, boarded windows staring blankly, the faint hum of generators buzzing from within like a trapped hornet's nest. Dismounting, Ethan lifted Olivia to Marcus. "Perimeter. Keep her clear." The girl clutched his arm, eyes fierce. "Bring her back. Promise." He met her gaze, the weight of it sealing the bond. "Like iron, kid." Sarah joined him at the main door, a pry bar in hand, her nurse's resolve turning to steel. "She's in the basement. Saw the van pull in. Guards inside, but they're sloppy. Greed makes men blind." Pushing through the creaking door, the air inside hit like a wall, stale, laced with rust and the sharp tang of fear sweat. Dim bulbs swung overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters. Footsteps echoed from below, muffled voices arguing in low tones. Ethan's hand found the knife at his belt, not for blood, but for the edge of truth. They descended the stairs, boots thudding softly on warped wood, hearts pounding in sync with the moral storm brewing. At the bottom, a corridor stretched, doors lining it like cells in a forgotten prison. One stood ajar, light spilling out, and from within came a voice, familiar, strained but unbroken. "Laura!" Ethan called, voice a low rumble that cut the tension. Silence, then a shuffle. The door swung wide, revealing her, disheveled, wrists bound with zip ties, but eyes blazing with the same fire he'd inked into memory. Bruises shadowed her face, signs of resistance etched in the set of her jaw. "Ethan?" "God." "The girl." Relief cracked her voice, but suspicion flickered too. Years apart, promises faded to echoes. "Safe, with the brothers." He knelt, slicing the ties with careful precision, the blade whispering against plastic. Sarah moved in, checking for injuries with gentle hands, her presence a balm of chosen kin. "We know about the clinic, the records, the payoffs. You're not alone in this fight." Laura's gaze dropped to the tattoo, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "You kept it, after everything." The words hung, heavy with unspoken history, the nights of fire, the roads diverged by war and regret. But redemption stirred in the dim light, a quiet victory over time's erosion. Outside, the remaining pursuers screeched to a halt, outnumbered by the viper ring encircling the yard. No shots fired. Instead, Marcus's voice boomed, radio in hand. "We've got her, and proof. Files from the van. Time to call it in clean." The air hummed with triumph, not of violence, but of integrity, holding firm against the corrupt tide. Ethan helped Laura to her feet, her hand brushing Olivia's bare, left in his pocket as a talisman. The family reformed, stronger in the breaking. As they emerged into the blinding sun, Olivia broke from Marcus, running to her mother with a cry that shattered the dust, arms enveloped, tears mixing with sweat. The reunion a poetic justice against the shadows. But in the distance, engines revved anew. The ring's masters wouldn't fade quietly. The road to full reckoning stretched on, paved with loyalty's enduring roar. If this story's gripping your heart, hit that like button. It helps spread these tales of honor and redemption far and wide. The sun hung like a molten coin over the mill's rusted silhouette, casting long shadows that stretched across the cracked earth like fingers grasping at escape. Dust settled slowly in the yard, stirred by the idling engines of the Viper convoy, a low growl underscoring the fragile peace. Laura Reyes stood in the center of it all, her arms wrapped tightly around Olivia, the girl's face buried in her mother's shoulder, muffled sobs rising like whispers against the wind. The reunion carried the weight of years unspoken, Laura's hands trembling as they stroked Olivia's tangled hair, the stuffed bear pressed between them like a bridge across the divide. Ethan's chest tightened at the sight, the tattoo on his arm seeming to pulse warmer under the relentless light, a silent witness to promises pulling taut. Sarah hovered nearby, her nurse's instincts sharp as she gently checked Laura over, dabbing at the shadows of struggle on her face with a clean cloth from her pack. "Easy now," she murmured, voice steady as the horizon. "No breaks, but you'll need rest. We've got a safe house up the line, old Viper safe haven off the grid." Her eyes met Ethan's, a nod passing between them, forged in the quiet loyalty of those who'd mended each other through the Badlands tolls. The chosen family expanded in moments like this, threads of trust weaving tighter against the fraying world. But the air crackled with unfinished business. From the ridge beyond the yard, those distant engines revved louder, a predatory hum cutting through the haze. 5 vehicles now, reinforced, their silhouettes sharpening as they crested the rise. Not just shadows anymore, these were the ring's enforcers, drawn by the mill's disturbance. Badges or not, their intent clear in the dust clouds billowing like war banners. Marcus spat into the dirt, his grizzled face hardening as he scanned the approach. "They're boxing us in. Quarry to the west, canyon east, no clean run without a fight." His hand rested on the radio at his belt, calling out coordinates to the brothers, fanning the perimeter, bikes forming a living barrier of chrome and resolve. Ethan stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel, positioning himself between the reunion and the threat. Laura lifted her head, eyes locking onto his with a mix of gratitude and fire, the same fierce spark that had drawn him in all those years ago, under a sky heavy with unspoken futures. "You came," she said softly, Olivia still clinging, her small voice piping up. "He promised, Mommy, like the tattoo." The words hung, simple and profound, stirring the Vipers into motion. Tyler revved his engine, prosthetic legs steady as he wheeled closer. Files from the van, got 'em secured in my pack, records showing the payoffs, the shuffled lives, clinics front for something darker, funneling the vulnerable to who knows where. His voice carried the moral outrage of a man who'd lost too much to indifference, the evidence a weapon sharper than steel. The convoy shifted, a coordinated dance honed from countless rides through peril. Ethan lifted Olivia onto his bike first, her trust in him now a quiet anchor, then helped Laura settle behind her, the mother's arms encircling both child and memory. "Hold on," he told them, the leather of his vest brushing Laura's hand as she gripped the sides. The contact was brief, electric, an echo of nights when promises were fresh, inked in passion before the wars and roads pulled them apart. Redemption flickered there, not in grand gestures, but in this choice to ride together, facing the corruption that had torn them asunder. Sarah mounted with Nathan, her pry bar stowed like a talisman, while Logan and the others formed the wedge, front line to punch through. Marcus took rear guard, his deep voice booming over the radio. "We ride for truth, brothers. No blood if we can help it. Let the light do the cutting." Engines roared to life in unison, a thunderclap that shook the mill's bones, vibrating through the earth like the heartbeat of honor itself. The scent of hot exhaust mingled with the dry bite of sage, the sun glinting off handlebars as they surged forward, a phalanx against the encroaching dark. The enforcers met them head-on, sedans and trucks swerving to block the narrow pass leading from the mill, tires screeching in a cacophony that drowned the wind. No shots rang out, yet, but chains rattled from open windows, figures leaning out with intent to snag and slow. Ethan twisted the throttle, the Harley leaping ahead, Olivia's gasp lost in the gale as they weaved through the first clash. Logan barreled into a gap, his bike side clipping a sedan's fender in a shower of sparks, forcing it sideways without a full collision. "Flank 'em!" Tyler yelled, veering left with half the pack, their dust trail a smokescreen against the pursuer's sight. The road narrowed into a gauntlet of red rock walls, the air thickening with tension as the chase twisted through arroyos where shadows played tricks. Laura's breath came hot against Ethan's back, her voice cutting through. "The clinic. It's called Horizon Care. I saw the ledgers, names of kids like Olivia, families broken for bribes to silence questions, sheriffs in on it, turning blind eyes for cuts of the take." Her words fueled the fire, painting the moral landscape stark. Justice not as vengeance, but as the unyielding exposure of rot, peeling back the institutional veil to let truth breathe. Ethan nodded, jaw set, the tattoo's vines seeming to twist with the road's curves, a reminder that some promises demanded sacrifice. The quiet kind that echoed louder than roars. One truck lunged close, a chain whipping out to hook Ethan's rear wheel, but Marcus intercepted, his bike slamming broadside in a controlled skid that tangled the weapon and sent the vehicle spinning into the ditch. Dust exploded like a veil, buying precious seconds. "Clear ahead," Nathan radioed, Sarah's voice chiming in. "They're braking, scattering like rats in light." The enforcers faltered, perhaps sensing the evidence's weight, the Viper's unity an unbreakable front. The convoy broke free onto open badlands, the mill shrinking to a speck in the mirror, sunlight pouring over them like absolution. They pushed hard for miles, the horizon blurring into gold and blue, until the safe house emerged, a weathered cabin nestled in a hidden wash, camouflaged by mesquite and rock. Engines wound down to silence, the group dismounting in a haze of relief and wariness. Olivia slid to the ground, running to explore the shaded porch, her laughter a fragile melody against the day's scars. Laura caught Ethan's arm as he tethered the bike, her touch lingering. "I never stopped believing you'd keep your word, even when the road took you." The confession hung, heavy with redemption's quiet pull, the chosen family's bonds tightening around them like vines unyielding. Inside, under the cabin's low beams, the group gathered around a scarred table, Tyler spreading the files under lantern light that flickered like fireflies. Names, dates, transactions, a web of corruption linking the clinic to badges and beyond. Lives like Laura's, twisted into silence. Marcus traced a finger over the map. We ride to the county seat at dusk. Hand this to a judge we trust. Clean one, from the old guard. No more shadows. Nods rippled, the air humming with purpose. Sarah brewed coffee, its rich aroma grounding the weary, while Nathan kept watch outside, the desert wind whispering warnings. As evening painted the sky in bruised purples, Ethan stepped onto the porch, Laura joining him, Olivia dozing inside with the bear. This changes everything, she said, gazing at the stars emerging like promises kept. He rolled up his sleeve, the tattoo catching the fading light. It does. For all of us. The road ahead held trials. The ring wouldn't yield without a fight, their masters pulling strings from hidden perches. But in the chosen family's roar, honor found its voice, a legacy carved not in violence, but in the unbreaking will to stand for the lost. Yet as night deepened, a faint engine hum echoed from the distance, not pursuers, but reinforcements. The safe house's sanctuary felt tenuous, the moral storm gathering force. Ethan's hand rested on the knife at his belt, ready for the truths yet to unfold. The lantern's glow flickered across the scarred wooden table in the safe house, casting wavering shadows that danced like uneasy spectres on the rough-hewn walls. The air inside hung thick with the aroma of strong coffee and the faint, earthy tang of mesquite smoke drifting from the dying embers in the stone hearth. Ethan leaned back in a creaking chair, his broad frame filling the space, eyes fixed on the spread of files before them, yellowed pages and grainy printouts that mapped a labyrinth of deceit. Laura sat across from him, her fingers tracing the edges of a document, her face illuminated in soft amber, the bruises fading into mere echoes under Sarah's careful tending. Olivia had curled up on a threadbare cot nearby, her chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of exhausted sleep, the stuffed bear clutched like a talisman against the night's uncertainties. Marcus paced the room's perimeter, his boots thudding softly on the packed dirt floor, a habit born from too many watches in hostile terrains. "County seat's a 2-hour ride at dusk," he said, voice a low rumble that cut through the quiet. "Judge Harlan, wait, no relation to you, Ghost, but he's straight as they come. Old school, owes the Vipers for pulling his nephew out of a scrape last year. We hand this over clean, no drama, and let the law do its job for once." He tapped the map into the wall, fingers lingering on the winding trail that snaked through the Badlands toward the distant lights of the town. Tyler nodded from his spot by the window, prosthetic leg extended as he cleaned his radio with a rag, the metallic click of parts echoing like a countdown. "Evidence is solid. Names, transfers, payoffs linking the clinic to the sheriff's office. Horizon Care's been laundering more than dirty money. It's souls they're trading." Laura's gaze lifted, meeting Ethan's with a depth that stirred the old currents between them. The tattoo on his arm, exposed in the rolled sleeve, seemed to watch from the shadows, her own face inked there as a vow from a lifetime ago. "I uncovered it by accident," she murmured, her voice threaded with the weariness of one who'd carried secrets too long. "Working nights at the clinic, I saw the patterns. Families pressured to sign away rights, kids vanishing into foster programs that fed a network. I copied what I could, but they caught on. The sheriff's men. They wanted the originals destroyed, me silenced." Her hand trembled slightly, but she steadied it, drawing strength from the circle of faces around her. Sarah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, the nurse's touch a quiet affirmation of the bonds that healed beyond flesh. "You stood up. That's more than most." Ethan felt the weight of it settle deeper, a moral anchor in the storm of his past. Wars had taught him loss, the road had etched isolation, but this, Laura's fire rekindled. Olivia's trust, like a fragile flame, demanded he bridge the years. He'd inked her image not as a chain, but as a compass, guiding him back to honor when the world spun cynical. Redemption whispered in the room's hush, not in absolution, but in the choice to act, to weave the chosen family into a shield against the institutional shadows that preyed on the vulnerable. "We ride at twilight," he said, his gravel tones sealing the pact. "No loose ends. The Viper's escort, but we keep it quiet. Truth's our blade." Outside, the desert cooled as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and indigo, the horizon a canvas of fading gold. The convoy prepped in hushed efficiency, engines tuned to murmurs, saddlebags secured with the files tucked deep. Logan checked chains with methodical care, his burly frame casting long shadows across the wash, while Nathan scouted the perimeter, binoculars sweeping the ridges for any glint of pursuit. The air carried the crisp bite of evening sage and the subtle hum of insects awakening, a deceptive calm before the moral reckoning. Olivia stirred inside, rubbing her eyes as Laura helped her into a spare jacket, the mother's smile soft but edged with resolve. "We're going to make it right, Mija. No more running." As the group mounted up, Ethan swung his leg over the Harley, the leather seat warm from the day's heat. Olivia settled in front, her small hands gripping the tank, while Laura took the rear, her arms encircling them both, a living echo of the tattoo's promise. The contact grounded him, her warmth against his back a reminder of roads not taken, regrets mended in motion. Sarah rode with Marcus this time, her presence a steadying force, while Tyler led the wedge, the files strapped secure. Engines coughed to life in a staggered chorus, low and controlled, vibrating through the earth like a shared heartbeat. They pulled out single file, weaving through the hidden trail that twisted like a vein through the rocks. The safe house shrinking to a silhouette in the gathering dusk. The Badlands unfolded under the emerging stars, the road a ribbon of shadowed asphalt flanked by whispering dunes. Wind tugged at jackets, carrying the faint scent of rain, long evaporated, the night's chill seeping in like doubt. Conversation crackled over radios, light banter to ease the tension, stories of past rides that bound them tighter. But Ethan's focus sharpened on the mirrors, the endless dark yielding no immediate threats, yet the prickle at his neck persisted. Corruption didn't surrender. It coiled, waiting for vulnerability. Laura's breath warmed his ear as she leaned forward. "That night in '98, you said we'd outrun anything together. I held on to that when things got dark." Her words bridged the chasm, stirring memories of starlit confessions, the ink still fresh on his skin. "We will," he replied, the vow carrying on the wind. Miles blurred, the county seat's faint lights blooming on the horizon like beacons of fragile hope. The town sprawled low and unassuming, clapboard buildings huddled against the wind, a courthouse steeple piercing the night sky. They approached from the outskirts, the convoy thinning to a discreet cluster as they neared the main drag. Tyler signaled a pull-off near a dimly lit alley, engines idling to whispers. "Judge's office is 2 blocks up. I'll take the files in. Lone rider, less eyes." Ethan nodded, but as Tyler dismounted, a low rumble echoed from the side streets. Not Viper, but familiar. Sedans, 3 of them, creeping from the shadows like predators scenting blood. Marcus's voice hissed over the radio. "Ambush! They're here, sheriff's crew blocking the exits." Headlights flared, pinning the group in harsh beams, figures emerging with the cold authority of bought justice. The air thickened, the moral storm breaking as the ring's enforcers closed in, chains and batons glinting under street lamps. Olivia tensed against Ethan, her whisper fierce. "Promise." He covered her hand with his, the Harley's engine thrumming readiness. "Iron," he said, the word a spark igniting the convoy. Loyalty surged, bikes revving in defiance, the chosen family forming a wall against the tide. Truth demanded confrontation now. The files alight that would either illuminate or ignite. The standoff stretched taut, engines growling like restrained beasts, the night air electric with unspoken stakes. Ethan dismounted slowly, positioning himself forward. Laura and Olivia shielded behind. The lead enforcer stepped into the light, a deputy from the diner encounter, mustache shadowed, eyes hard as flint. "Hand over the woman and the kid. This doesn't end well otherwise." His voice dripped false command. But Ethan saw the flicker, fear beneath the bluster, the web unraveling. Tyler clutched the pack, inching toward the alley, while Sarah's voice cut clear. "It's over. The judge sees this tonight and your house of cards falls." Tension coiled, a psychological vice tightening as the deputy raised a hand, signaling his men. No shots, but the threat loomed in the shuffle of boots and the rattle of restraints. Ethan's mind raced. Justice, poetic, not brutal, demanded they hold the line without shattering it. Marcus flanked left, Logan right, the Vipers a silent phalanx of scars and honor. Laura's hand found Ethan's in the dim, a squeeze that echoed their old vow. Redemption hung in the balance, the tattoo burning like a brand under his sleeve. As the first enforcer lunged, the night erupted into controlled chaos, fists meeting resistance, bikes maneuvering to block, the roar of loyalty drowning the corrupt advance. Truth's road twisted sharper, leading to dawn's unyielding light. The night air crackled with the raw edge of confrontation, street lamps casting stark pools of yellow light that fractured across the alley's uneven pavement. Engines idled in a low, menacing chorus, the Viper's Harleys forming an unyielding semicircle, their chrome frames glinting like drawn blades under the moon's indifferent gaze. Ethan stood at the forefront, his scarred silhouette a wall of leather and resolve, one hand steady on Olivia's shoulder, while Laura pressed close behind, her breath shallow but fierce. The enforcers advanced in a ragged line, 6 men, shadows of bought authority, their batons tapping palms like impatient metronomes, eyes darting between the bikers and the shadowed courthouse steps just beyond. The lead deputy, his moustache twitching in the humid breeze, raised his chin in false bravado. "Last chance! Step back, or we make this official." But official meant nothing here. In the underbelly where badges twisted into nooses, Ethan's voice cut through the tension, gravel rough and unyielding, carrying the weight of promises etched deeper than ink. Official, like shuffling kids for payoffs, like silencing women who see the truth. He nodded toward Tyler, who clutched the pack of files like a sacred relic, inching sideways toward the alley's mouth. The evidence burned in Ethan's mind, ledgers of shattered lives, Horizon Care's facade crumbling under the glare of exposed greed. No more shadows. This was the light of justice, poetic and inevitable, forged in the quiet fire of loyalty. The deputy sneered, signaling his men forward, boots scraping asphalt in a surge that ignited the fray. Chaos bloomed without the thunder of guns. Fists met resistance in controlled bursts, the Vipers moving like a well-oiled machine, bodies weaving to protect the core. Marcus charged left, his burly frame shoulder-checking an enforcer into a lamppost with a thud that echoed off brick walls, the man's baton clattering free. Logan followed, tire iron in hand, but used only to parry, sweeping low to trip another without drawing blood. "For the lost!" he growled, the cry rippling through the brothers like a shared pulse. Sarah dismounted swiftly, her nurse's poise turning to precision as she dodged a grab, knee driving into a knee to unbalance without malice, clearing a path for Tyler. Ethan shielded the women and child, his massive arms a barrier as 2 enforcers lunged. One swung wild, baton whistling air, but Ethan sidestepped, using the man's momentum to shove him into a parked sedan, metal denting with a resonant groan. The second came low, aiming for his legs, but a Viper brother, Nathan, young and quick, intercepted, tackling clean and rolling away in the dust. No savagery, just the disciplined fury of men who'd chosen family over fury, honor over hate. Olivia's eyes widened, but she didn't cry out. Instead, her small hand squeezed Ethan's tighter, whispering, "They're strong, like you." The words fueled him. A child's faith brighter than any dawn. Laura moved with them, her fire undimmed, snatching a fallen radio from the ground and hurling it at the deputy's feet, the crackle of static bursting like a warning shot. "Call it off! The judge is waiting. Your names are in those files." Her voice pierced the scuffle, raw with the moral outrage of one who'd stared down the abyss. The deputy faltered, glancing back as headlights swept the street. Not reinforcements, but a county cruiser, lights flashing blue and red without sirens, pulling up from the crossroad. Out stepped a tall figure in a crisp suit, badge glinting, official but untainted, Judge Harlan, alerted by a viper whisper network that spanned the Badlands like roots in parched soil. The judge's presence shifted the tide, his voice booming with the authority of clean intent. "Enough! Deputies, stand down! I've got a call from Tucson PD. Federal eyes are on this mess." He strode forward, ignoring the frozen enforcers, his gaze locking on Tyler. "The package?" Tyler handed over the files without a word, the transfer a quiet victory, pages rustling like whispers of vindication. The deputy sputtered, face paling in the lamplight as realization dawned, the web collapsing, threads of corruption snapping under truth's weight. One by one, the enforcers lowered their weapons, hands rising in reluctant surrender, the air thick with the scent of sweat and defeat. As cuffs clicked and the judge's cruiser radioed for backup, the Vipers reformed, engines humming softly in the aftermath. Ethan knelt to Olivia's level, brushing dust from her cheek, the night's chill settling like a balm. "Told you. Iron." She beamed, hugging him fiercely before turning to Laura. "The three of them are not unbreakable." Sarah checked scrapes with steady hands, her smile a quiet triumph, while Marcus clapped shoulders, the brotherhood's bond humming in the shared silence. Redemption settled over them, not as a blaze, but a steady glow. The promise kept, scars woven into strength, the chosen family emerging whole from the storm. Dawn crept over the county seat, painting the courthouse spires in soft rose, the desert wind carrying away the last echoes of struggle. The convoy rolled out at first light, a subdued thunder heading back to the open road. Files delivered and justice's wheels turning slow but sure. Laura rode with Ethan now, Olivia between them, her laughter mingling with the engine's song as they crested the ridge. The tattoo on his arm caught the rising sun, vines twisting like roads untaken, but no longer regrets, only legacies of loyalty, promises that outlasted the dust. Miles later, at a roadside overlook where the Badlands met endless sky, they paused. Laura traced the ink gently, her touch a bridge across years. "You came back for us, after everything." Ethan met her eyes, the weight lifting like morning mist. "Family's what you fight for, chosen or not." Olivia skipped to the edge, bear in hand, pointing to the horizon. "Ocean someday." Laura nodded, pulling her close. "Soon, Mija, with all of us." The Vipers fanned out behind, a convoy of guardians, engines ready for whatever shadows lingered. Corruption's ring would unravel in courts and headlines, lives reclaimed one truth at a time. Honor's road stretched wide, paved with quiet sacrifices and unyielding bonds, the roar of freedom carrying them forward into the light. Thank you for riding this journey of promises and redemption with us. If these stories of honor and chosen family touch your soul, hit that subscribe button and join the convoy. More tales await on the horizon.